I'll bet that most of you can tell me what that is. Who's kissed it, who's lifted it, and who has it right now. And maybe some of you can even tell me who designed it. But I'll bet you don't know where these materials in this trophy really came from. Because the materials in this trophy have an origin story that is completely absurd. Because this trophy, one of the most recognizable symbols on Earth, only exists because of buried rocks, violent tectonics, and stars that died billions of years ago. This is the FIFA World Cup. Didn't need me to tell you that. The designer and manufacturer GDE Broughton company chose two materials for this trophy. Gold and then this green material that is sometimes mined by children. More on that later. And weirdly enough, I've actually seen these two materials in the wild. I'm the cosmic geologist, you can call me Cosmic, and before I started making science videos, I worked as a geologist in a gold, copper, silver mine. And then I went on to study space rocks, and now I'm in aerospace engineering, which is why I love talking about this kind of stuff. So let's start with the gold. Because while gold comes from mines here on Earth, its story begins with very rare and very catastrophic events in space. We actually have stars to thank for the elements in the universe. Stars spend most of their lives crushing atoms together to get heavier ones. Hydrogen becomes helium and that cycle continues on. But that process stops at iron, which is a problem for gold because making anything heavier than iron requires so much more energy than most stars can produce. And this is where it gets weird because most scientists theorize that gold formed during catastrophic stellar events, like when two neutron stars collide, leading to moments so violent, energetic, and flooded with neutrons that the core of atoms become bombarded and rapidly transformed into heavier elements, including gold. So pretty much everything after iron on the periodic table, that's thanks to some of the most catastrophic stellar events in the history of the universe. Just think, there's about 6 kilograms or 13 freedom units of catastrophic star guts in this trophy. How many stars do you think had to collide to make this thing? Drop it in the comments. Whoever gets closest gets a prize. And how do we go from colliding stars to this trophy? Well, that gold was wrapped up into the blob of stuff that made our solar system, and then it was sprinkled throughout the Earth. Plate tectonics happened, some time went by, and then bam, civilization came by, ready to mine it. And back when this trophy was made, one country dominated the world in gold production. It wasn't the United States, it wasn't Australia, it was South Africa, which at the time was producing about 2/3 of the world's gold. And that's not even the most interesting part. And if you've liked this video so far, consider liking it. It really helps a small channel like mine. And if you're a geologically curious person, consider subscribing because I talk about stories from the crust of the cosmos all the time. I love doing it, and I'd love you to come along. So what made South Africa so unbelievably rich in gold? Ancient rivers. Most of the gold that's mined in South Africa came from ancient river deposits that are nearly 3 billion years old. That's long before multicellular life even tries to appear on Earth. And over billions of years, those ancient river sediments that carried gold got buried beneath other rocks. And by the way, this is the exact way that a desperate gold prospector in the 1800s would have panned for gold. They would have gone to a river that would have effectively caught the gold and deposited it in riverbeds. But the difference is these river sediments were slowly compressed as massive sections of the Earth's crust collided, pushing those gold-bearing rocks deep underground, which is why some of the deepest mines in the world are in South Africa. 2 of them are. One of them's about 2 miles deep. And at the bottom, it gets up to 140 degrees Celsius. Makes me really grateful I worked in an open pit mine. Yikes. So now you know how the World Cup trophy got its gold and how that gold formed. But what about those gold bands? And what was that I mentioned about child labor? This is malachite, a copper-bearing mineral that gets formed when copper gets chemically transformed after its pre-existing copper minerals start breaking down. Kind of like copper cannibalism. And if you've seen it described online as a rare gemstone, It could not be further from the truth. It is not rare. The only thing rare about it is the list of geologic processes that have to stack up to make it even possible to make malachite. I did used to see it occasionally in the mine that I worked in, usually on a cliff face. That mine that I worked in was in the US. And the malachite that's in the World Cup trophy almost certainly did not come from that mine, let alone the US. It likely came from the other side of the planet, specifically from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And that's thanks to the Katanga Copperbelt, which, say that 3 times fast, which is a 450 kilometer stretch of ore-bearing rocks in the southeastern part of the country. And it holds a huge portion of the Earth's copper. And to understand why, we have to go back 800 million years. Back then, this region wasn't a rainforest. It was a shallow sedimentary basin filled with mudflats, evaporating lakes, and slow-moving seawater, more like a prehistoric inland sea. And over time, copper-bearing fluids moved through these sediments and interacted with the chemistry of the rocks. In the right conditions, copper was locked into a mineral form in these basins. And then a bit later, a geologically absurd thing happened. A massive mountain building event, the Lefillian orogeny, and that compressed and deformed these rocks. And that mountain building event didn't create copper from scratch, but it reshaped the system, concentrating the copper that was there, moving it, and effectively upgrading some of the deposits into the mines that we see today. But that's just the copper story. Malachite didn't form during any of that because one key element was missing: oxygen. Because once these rocks were exposed to oxygen and groundwater, the copper minerals began to break down because they didn't really like that. Essentially rusting. So the copper dissolved, moved with the groundwater, and re-precipitated as vivid green secondary minerals. Malachite. And that green stone became valuable because this mineral is like about 50% copper by weight, which if you want copper, sounds like a good deal. It became so valuable, in fact, that parts of the Congo developed industrial mining operations. And in some areas, that includes small-scale mines where poverty, weak regulation, and global demand for copper have contributed to child labor. Which means the materials in this trophy don't just tell a story about geology. They tell a story about people too. So now maybe you know why I love rocks so much. Because rocks are never just rocks. Like this trophy that's the product of dead stars colliding, tectonic collisions, groundwater chemistry, mining, human labor, and billions of years of planetary history. And somehow, all of that ended up making one of the most recognizable symbols of victory in the world. That's also worth about $500,000, by the way. It's insane. Not bad for a lump of metal and some green rocks. I'm the Cosmic Geologist, and if you like hearing about how planetary science is hiding in everyday life, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.